Unfortunately, the season went bad. What is done is done, okay?
Well, for me, it was all about working at a very good football club and having the opportunity to be successful. And I jumped at the chance.
It did feel as if he'd listened, that he'd taken on somebody that knew the club very well.
I don't think there was any qualms about us not doing particularly well, as long as there wasn't any of the interference that we'd already started to experience.
The chairman would come in and then start pointing at the ball and go, no, he doesn't play. He doesn't play there.
There were some mad things, like some decision that didn't make sense to us as a players. We knew exactly where them decisions were coming from.
Hello everyone and welcome to season 2 of the Circus Upstairs. We are back.
I'm James Masters, no longer a long-suffering Leyton Orient fan, just a very happy Leyton Orient fan.
I'm glad you said that because I was waiting to pick you up on saying long-suffering when we've just won our first league title for 53 years and was going to suggest that if there was ever a time that you weren't suffering, it should be now.
No, I'm absolutely delighted. I'm ecstatic. Every adjective you can think of it at the moment, Matt, just use it because that's what I am.
When we lose our first game in League One.
Well ends out.
Exactly. I'm Matt Simpson, author of the book Leyton Orient's Greats, sales of which have not increased in the slightest since the launch of season 1.
I was going to say something sarcastic or mock you, but I just feel so sorry for you that I can't actually bring myself to do it. So we'll move on.
Sad, complete waste of time, the whole thing. How do you feel season 1 went?
Yeah, I think season 1 went really well. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to it. It certainly got a lot of people talking. And also, I think it was really good timing with the release, Matt, on your part, because it was great to hear just how bad everything was, just as Orient were on our way to promotion. And the contrast between where we were then and where we are now, it just seemed the perfect timing.
That was all designed to play out exactly like that. I think it went down quite well, but can I read you a tweet that I received from someone called @OrientForever on Twitter, which reads, "Why don't you two clowns stop raking over the past and get behind the team for once in your lives? You make me sick. #twats."
Got a point. It's a fair point, you know.
I made that up actually, but it was a approximation of many of the tweets I receive every time I write a blog.
Really?
Yes. So season 2, in the spirit of The Empire Strikes Back, Godfather Part 2, The Dark Knight, and of course Police Academy 2, their first assignment, I'm intending that this is going to be better than the original.
Well, it's going to start well. We know that. It's going to start really well.
Good point. And before we get into it, can you quickly recap what happened in season 1 and where we are now?
Well, Orient were relegated on the last day after losing away at Swindon, despite being 2-0 up. They'd had a dreadful season. Managers had come and gone. Liverani, his contract was not renewed. And despite having some of the most talented players in the division, Joby McAnuff, Darius Henderson, Jay Simpson, the O's could not survive. There was the ill-fated reality TV show. There was Andrea Dossena, allegedly arrested for stealing honey from Harrods. And there were defeats after defeats after defeats.
Well, that's jolly. I'd like to say that things improve in season 2, but they don't. They get much, much worse. Buckle in, listeners. There was a report suggesting that Francesco Becchetti was considering selling the club after the relegation. What was that all about?
Yes, so in May, the Evening Standard came out with a report that said Becchetti was considering selling the club. According to the Standard, they wrote that there are a couple of overseas buyers looking to invest in the London club, and a prominent Middle Eastern businessman currently living in Beijing is due to arrive in the next fortnight for informal talks about Orient.
That is the type of bold leadership we were expecting from Francesco Becchetti. Things go a bit wrong and he just bails out.
I mean, you say that, Matt, but we wish he had.
It would have been better if he had. And actually, things weren't looking that great for Becchetti off the pitch because we found out on the 9th of June that the Albanian government had put out an arrest warrant for him for fraud. What was all that about?
Yeah, so as you said, the Albanian authorities issued an arrest warrant for him and his mother, with the pair and the two business associates accused of fraud-related offences and money laundering, according to The Guardian. These charges related to a failed hydroelectric scheme that allegedly cost the Albanian government tens of millions of euros in grants and unpaid taxes. It should be said that the charges carried a maximum prison sentence of 15 years.
Okay, that's not looking that good for him. At the same time, the Albanian government impounded Agon TV channel, which I'm guessing made Nicole Kidman extremely agitated that she'd had to sit next to Francesco Becchetti on the launch night just a few months earlier, although the seven-figure sum that she was no doubt paid probably softened the blow a little. Despite all that, Francesco Becchetti did manage to appoint his fifth manager of his reign. Who was that?
That was Ian Hendon. And you know what? At the time, I thought that's an okay appointment. I'm happy with that. Hendon had managed before briefly at Dover, but he'd done a lot of coaching at West Ham. He's obviously played for Orient, I think, in the 93 to 97. He was a decent defender. He had a good shot on him, I remember, from right back. And I thought that's someone who knows lower league football. It's like they've listened. Someone who knows the game, will have contacts at levels where we can bring players in. And so I actually was quite encouraged by that appointment.
I would say Ian Hendon is the Orient manager I would least like to get in a fight with.
But you managed it, didn't you? Or was that you managed to get in a fight?
He's pretty hard, Ian Hendon. He's a scary man.
Yeah, I think assertive, maybe. I don't think he would suffer fools.
Let's listen to what Ian himself said in his first press conference.
Do you have any concerns over the future?
I think, speaking with the chairman and the conversations I've had, the club are looking for stability.
The club are looking for stability. I feel like that quote's going to come back and bite him.
They didn't look very hard, did they? That's what I would say.
We were also very privileged in that press conference to hear from everyone's favourite CEO, Alessandro Angelieri, who seems to have done quite well in his English lessons over the close season. And this is what he had to say.
Yes, the last 12 months is experience for us. We did some mistakes, honestly, and we don't want to do the same mistakes the next season. We want to start. We want to take a book and turn the page. We have a new page, white page, to write with a little experience that we have taken last season, and he is our writer. Okay.
What a hilarious man Alessandro Angelieri is. I love the way he describes the catastrophic mismanagement of the club that went on in the season before as a few little mistakes.
It doesn't fill you with confidence that they've learned or listened, does it? But they've turned a new page. You know, Matt, get behind the team.
Alessandro Angelieri also did an interview with our friends at the Orient Outlook podcast, and they also asked him what went wrong last season and what he planned to do about it this season.
I would like to explain that last year we started too late because we bought the club during the first week of July, and there was no time for prepare a budget in advance, no? And we started with the whole team, and we improved the team with the big players with the idea to go up. Unfortunately, the season went bad, and what is done is done. Okay. This year we started immediately after the end of the season, and we worked hard for prepare a right budget for the season, because I think that it's not necessary to spend too much money, but it's good to spend the money in the right way.
Well, I think the last part of what he said there is it's important to not spend too much money, but spend it in the right way. He was a little more on it, I suppose. You'd have to say, as if he'd learned from those little mistakes that they made.
No one has ever described Alessandro Angelieri as on it before.
You want to give them the benefit of the doubt at that time, but then, of course, that's more difficult to do as the season goes on.
I think you're right. I think it did feel like they had started to learn and actually made another appointment that seemed to confirm that in the appointment of Ian Hendon's assistant, a man called Andy Hessenthaler.
Controversial, because I've spent my whole life calling him Andy Hessenthaler. But when he spoke to us, he called himself Andy Hessenthaler. So I don't really know what to think anymore. But he was the former Gillingham manager. He had a distinguished playing career, excellent experience, worked together before at Gillingham where Hendon was assisting Hessenthaler. So I thought sensible appointment. Again, sensible appointment.
So happily, we were able to talk to Andy Hessenthaler, as we must call him. First of all, I was really curious as to what he'd heard about what had gone on at the club the previous season and whether that affected his decision to join the club.
Not really, because obviously I was coming in with Ian Hendon. He sold me the club, and obviously I played against Leighton Orient a few times over my career, so I knew it was a very good club, and I didn't really know too much about, obviously, the chairman there and at the time, but for me it was all about working a very good football club alongside Ian and having the opportunity to be successful, and I jumped at the chance.
So he was up for it. Fair play to him. And shortly after Andy Hessenthaler was appointed, the club made another appointment, the goalkeeping coach, Lee Harrison. Who's he?
Yeah, so Lee Harrison was the Orient goalkeeper, actually, for a couple of years. He was at Barnet before that, when he was fantastic in that Barnet side that did so well. Another sensible addition to the backroom staff. I keep saying the word sensible. Quite scary, but at that point, yeah, I can get on board with all of this.
We should say that Kevin Nugent was still on the backroom staff, so listeners to season 1 will remember that he was manager number 2 in Becchetti's reign, but still stayed at the club in a coaching capacity. So between the 4 of them, as you say, I think that was a pretty solid, experienced quadruplet.
I think the word you're looking for is quartet.
Quartet. Thank you. That's why you're here, James. So very happily, we also managed to speak to Lee Harrison. And I asked him pretty much the same question. Did he have any reservations about joining Orient, given what he knew about what had happened the season before? And in answering that, he talks about talking to Kevin Dearden, who, for anyone who is not familiar with Leyton Orient goalkeeping coaches, he was the goalkeeping coach and worked on the recruitment team in the previous season. So here's Lee.
Yeah, so Ian obviously became Orient manager, and he approached me in the pre-season and said, look, I'd like you to come with me. So I started the pre-season at West Ham and then came over there with him. But no, I'm really close with Kevin Dearden, so I gave him a call and had a long chat about the what's, whys and wheres, and really that should have been the warning because he told me some of the things that had gone on. But, it was tough because Orient was a club that I'd started as a child and a kid and grown up there and played for. So probably my heart sort of ruled my head a little bit. But Kev gave me some warnings as to what might happen.
What did he say?
Just said that you'll find times when it's all okay, and he said then you'll find times where things get interfered with quite a bit. And he was sort of in charge, I think, of recruitment as well at the time under Russell Slade. And he drew up a list of people that would be good for Leyton Orient Football Club, and then was given a totally different list of foreign acquisitions that they wanted to bring in themselves. So I think he thought, the alarm bells were ringing for him then, and kind of warned me that there'd be times when you think it'd all be all right, and then there's times when it gets quite volatile.
Should have listened to Kevin. That's what I'll say. Should have listened to Kevin.
So with the backroom team in place, there was a pretty big overhaul of the squad coming into the season. What happened, James?
I mean, lots of players who were part of that fantastic run to the League One player final under Russell Slade left the club.
That's right. We lost captain Nathan Clark, strikers Kevin Lisby and David Mooney. Scott Cuthbert went to Luton, which was a terrible move. They were clearly never going anywhere. We also lost some of the Italians that contributed so much to relegation. So Gianvito Plasmati returned to play for I'm going to assume a local under-11 team in rural Tuscany. Andrea De Sena went back to Italy to eat as much honey as he liked without paying for it. And dashingly handsome translator Roberto Gagliardi also left. But don't forget the name, because like a chainsaw-wielding psychopath from a horror franchise, he is going to keep coming back to Orient and proves impossible to kill. Hold that thought. One player, however, who didn't leave was Mathieu Baudry. Who's that, James?
Yeah, Matt was a central defender. You know, not all players love the clubs they play for, but I felt like Matt and the fans had a special rapport, especially after the playoff final. He missed the penalty in that playoff final, and legend is that he went to the pub where the Orient fans were after the playoff final and bought drinks to apologise for missing, which kind of says a lot about the man.
Yeah, as if that makes up for it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
How dare you try to fob me off with half a pint of weak lager after failing to score a penalty that would have got us into the championship? Just kidding. He's a great guy. Nicknamed Frenchie with typical footballer wit because he is French, not because he had a penchant for kissing his teammates with tongues when they score a goal. We spoke to Matt Baudry for this podcast, and he is an absolutely lovely guy. And the first thing we asked him is, why on earth, after everything that happened in the previous season, did he stay at Orient?
I was thinking because the relegation season was so bad. I was thinking, yeah, I can't carry on like that. So I said I wanted to leave. But then I spoke to the Hendon. He called me in the summer, and he told me that things that change. The chairman just understood his mistakes, and it was going to be different this year. And he wanted to build a strong team around the nucleus of players we had, and we wanted to play attractive type of football. It just convinced me, really. So then I was ready for the challenge to trying to get back up, really.
So we cleared out a lot of players, but we signed quite a few new ones. Who were they, James?
Again, I thought they were sensible signings. Ollie Palmer came in from Mansfield, the forward.
Now starring in the Disney Plus TV series, Road to Wrexham.
They won the National League, did you know? Just checking.
I just wish the media had reported on that, because that feels like it should have been a big story. Anyway, some of the other signings included defender Sean Hesse from Colchester United. We're going to hear much more about him. Sammy Moore from AFC Wimbledon, Paul McCallum from the West Ham youth team, and Blair Turgott from Coventry City. So this was quite different to the season before, when we'd gone for big name championship players. What had changed, do you think?
Well, I think you heard Alessandro talk about, spending the money the right way. And it sounds like they've listened to Ian Hendon here. I can't imagine these are names that Becchetti's picked out the hat to sign.
Another club insider that we spoke to as part of this podcast was Howard Gould, who oversaw all of the community outreach that Orient did. So organised players going into schools. He organised the penalty shootouts that happened at halftime, and he had a good inside track on what was going on at the club. So we asked him how he felt pre-season.
There was a sense of okay, he's come to realise that you need an English-speaking manager who knows the club. And Ian had been there before, and he had quite a strong reputation. Being not old school, but getting things done. So I don't think there was any qualms about us not doing particularly well, as long as there wasn't any of the interference that we'd already started to experience.
So we asked Lee Harrison during pre-season whether they did start to experience any of the interference that had been common in the season before.
Yeah, I think through pre-season we were just left alone and pretty much left to get on with it, which was good. And then there was a couple of things with contracts that, as the pre-season rolled on, I think it was Shane Lowry came to us and said, "I'll just to let you know, I've looked in my contract. I found out I've got a get-out clause." And we kind of said, "Well, when did you find out about that?" He said, "I've only just read it." So we pulled Alessandro and that, and they said, "Yeah, we give it, but we forgot to tell you." So kind of we were going through things through pre-season, and some of the things opened our eyes a little bit. But through pre-season, we were fine. They pretty much left us to our own devices.
Did you feel positive about Orient's chances that season?
Yeah, because listen, you go through the squads. A lot of the players there were playing in the playoffs to get into the championship.
Okay, let's get into the season. What was the first game, James?
The first home game, or the first game of the season, was against Barnet, and I remember it on a personal level because it was my stag, and I was made to dress in full kit and boots by my friends all the way to Brisbane Road, and then I had to walk around the pitch with all the kids waving the flag, and then I waved the flag as the players came out, while copping a lot of stick from some of the players as well, actually.
That wasn't the only thing that happened. So pre-game, I don't know if you remember this because you might have been caught up in your stag activities, but Becchetti, Hendon and Angelieri came on and did a lap of honour before the game started. And like, on what planet does a team that's just been relegated, does the president, the CEO and the new manager do a lap of honour before the first game? And what particularly annoyed me about it was I thought it was really, really gutless of Becchetti to do that, because he knew that if Hendon was with him being an ex-Orient player and a new manager, people weren't going to boo. But if Becchetti himself or Becchetti and Angelieri had done a lap of honour, everyone would have booed, right?
Yeah, essentially, Ian Hendon being used as a human shield.
It was a very telling, gutless moment of Becchetti. Well, a combination of being gutless and wanting the sort of adoration that I think characterised a lot of the reasons behind why he bought Orient in the first place. Yeah, I thought it was a very telling moment. Did we win that game?
Yeah, we did. We won 2-0.
It was a really good start, and the good start continued. We actually won all of our games in August. So we won our first 5 games. It obviously put us top of the table. It included, in the win over Stevenage, genuinely the best goal I've ever seen in my life.
I don't think I can forget that goal, which was just a sensational liquid football back to front. Just a fabulous team goal.
I think it's the best goal that's ever been scored. I urge everyone to go to YouTube and Google Blair Turgott, Orient v Stevenage, and you'll see what I mean. As a consequence of Orient's fantastic form throughout August, Becchetti himself started exhibiting some weird behaviour. So he took to wearing Orient kit to games. He took to sitting in the away end during away matches, and after he got picked up in his expensive car, would be like hanging out the window, high-fiving fans. It was all very bizarre.
Just remember, suddenly we start winning and suddenly he's got his shirt on. I do think there were some fans who felt, okay, he's buying into it a bit more now.
We spoke to Dave Victor, who hopefully listeners will remember from season 1, who is the voice of Leyton Orient, covers Orient for the BBC. And we talked to him about those weird high fives that were going on from Becchetti outside games.
It was amazing. You think how bad we were at Swindon and how people were so keen to get it to work. And I know how they felt. I wanted it to work, and it did feel as if he'd listened, that he'd taken on somebody that knew the club very well, knew the division very well, and clearly had been a successful coach in his own right at West Ham United. It was a sound appointment from a distance. But I was surprised just how supporters were so forgiving of him, because he was on the pitch, wasn't he, on the opening day of that season, in the middle of the pitch, and getting the applause as he welcomed Ian Hendon to the club. And you just think, you know, we're in the 4th division now, and not so long ago we could have been in the Championship. You know, there wasn't too much really to say thank you to. And I just got this huge sense of frustration about the whole thing, and I was never very confident.
So things were going pretty well. We talked to Matt Baudry on his perspective on those first 5 victories.
We started the season pretty well, to be fair. We played some nice football, so pretty much felt a bit like what the manager told me on the phone when I spoke in the summer. So the mood were quite good in the camp. Like we didn't really hear that much from the chairman at that time. So yeah, it was pretty good.
So it was all going brilliantly. We won all our games and we went into September full of confidence. What happened in September?
5 wins on the bounce in August, absolutely flying, going into September, and didn't win a single game, Matt. In fact, that first league game in September, the day before my wedding, nearly derailed the whole wedding, I must say. It was the 4-0 defeat away at Exeter.
We did lose 4-0 to Exeter. We then lost 2-1 to Carlisle and we drew the next 3 matches. So by the end of September, we'd dropped to 5th in the table with 18 points from 10 games, which was still pretty good. We were obviously up there. We were in the playoff zone. But as a consequence of form dropping off a bit, that dreaded word interference started to rear its head again. So we talked to Lee Harrison about what was happening.
As soon as we lost that first one at Exeter, then we found out the interference started a little bit.
What actually started happening?
Well, what you'd have is they'd obviously have opinions on players, and come round to a Friday, we'd be sat in the room at the training ground, which is a big table with all the staff, and Ian might have written a team up on the board that he thought would play, and the chairman would come in about 9:30 with about 10 other hangers on, and then start pointing at the ball and go, "No, he doesn't play. He doesn't play there." And Ian was bullish. No, he plays. He plays. So already you're getting the chairman coming in and making an opinion on people, and they're standing around the training ground on the edge of the pitch on a Friday, and the players then get a sense of, here we go again, I think, because of what's gone on the year before. So that was the first real signs that things were going to start.
So, I mean, that is quite extraordinary. The president coming in and saying who does and doesn't play, I'm sure is not something you've ever experienced before or after, is it?
No, I think chairman will always have an opinion, but it's very rare they come down the training ground. I'm sure managers always speak to chairman, like, what's your team? What do you think? And they have that relationship. I'm not sure coming in and do it visually in front of all the staff and having an opinion is a good thing. And then being around the training ground on the Friday, I'm not sure it puts the players at ease, especially after the season before, when a lot of them have known what's gone on and seen some of the things that have happened.
When you say Ian was bullish about who did and didn't play, like, was he overruled by Becchetti sometimes? Did he have to concede?
No, I think Ian, look, this is probably Ian's very, strong-headed, and I think probably the fact that he didn't concede on things was probably his undoing in the end. Chairman didn't want Sean Clohessy in the side. Was adamant and pointed, no, I don't want him in the team. And that was sort of like 4 or 5 games in, that was happening. And Ian was like, no, he's playing. He's the only right back, or he's the one I've got at the moment, he's playing. So things like that were going on. And players were then aware as well. I know Sean Clohessy was totally aware of that the president didn't want him in the team. Lloyd James would be aware that that wasn't the case, because the Italians couldn't help themselves going round and speaking to these players. Couldn't help going and getting in the ear of these players and saying, look, don't think you'll be playing Saturday, or, things like that. And how do you manage that then? When players are being told by other people at the club what's going on, or what people think of them. And Ian was bullish. Ian was like, no, I'm the manager. This is what needs to happen.
I didn't want Sean Clohessy in the team either.
He played a fabulous part in that goal that you raved about, the Blairto goal.
I feel bad that I made that cheap joke now. More to the point, that is extraordinary, is it not?
Mind-blowing, really, when you hear Harrison talking.
We also asked Andy Hessenthaler for his perspective on that interference.
To have, obviously, a lot of Italian guys at the training ground. It was 2 or 3 at the time, the chairman's entourage, as they said. And it was very new to me as a manager, because obviously I spent a lot of time at Gillingham as manager. I've never experienced that before, to have so many people watching training. So it was an interesting one. But yeah, it didn't take long.
What was actually going on with all those guys at the training ground? How are they involving themselves?
Well, I'm just used to, obviously, been over the years, just obviously the manager, assistant manager, and our staff, the footballing staff, but not to have, two or three guys overseeing training, having to speak to them pretty much every day on what we're doing, and team selection, what the team's going to be, and had to all be reported back to the chairman. So it was new to me, and I've never seen anything like it. So they just wanted to be involved all the time on what we was doing. And for me, we was employed there to run the football side of it, and coach the team, and obviously and manage the team, and that was our job. And we should have been left to do that job.
When you say you had to report back to them what you were doing, what the team selection was, were they also influencing or trying to influence what your decisions were around that?
Not so much the guys that there are. The chairman did, though. Yeah, I mean, the chairman did. He like I say, you pick a team for the weekend or Tuesday, and it was always questioned. You could see that he wanted his say, the chairman, and it got to the stage where that he was trying to pick the team. Yeah, he trying to influence the team selection.
So how did that actually work? What would he do?
Well, he did visit the training ground quite a few times, to speak to Ian and myself, and obviously it was mainly on a Friday before a game on a Saturday to see what the team was, and there will be a lot of questions, or he should be playing, or he should be playing, or we'd have to report to London to speak to him and his home and go through the team. So that's pretty much how it worked. As us as football people, we pick the team as we saw it. Again, I've worked with chairmen, and they'll all have an opinion on it. 100% they will, and rightly so. But ultimately, it's got to come down to the manager to pick the team, and not be influenced by, as I say, I've worked with chairmen before, and they've let me get on with the job. So it was a strange situation, one that I didn't enjoy.
I don't think anyone from the outside knew how bad it was. I think everyone knew it was there, but that level of detail really is quite shocking.
Also, the arrogance to think that you as a non-football person have better judgment or insight or expertise around picking the team than someone who's lived and breathed it all their life. It's like getting you to pick the team, James. It'd be catastrophic disaster.
I don't know if my teams would have been quite as bad as the ones that were picked by the regime at that time.
I think I could pick a better team than some of the Orient managers under Becchetti's reign.
Not difficult.
True. We continued to talk to Hess. Let's just call him Hess, because I feel really uncomfortable about pronouncing his name wrong now. And you can probably hear in my voice every time I say it. I'm just not quite sure. So I'm going to call him Hess now. We continued to talk to Hess and asked him how this sort of interference was affecting him and the squad.
I think if you ask any player who's involved in that, obviously the chairman's time at the club, it was too much unrest at times, and like I said, I go back. It's a shame because it's a wonderful club and wonderful fans, and they deserve better. And it was tough because obviously you guys, certainly didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. It's hard for you to know what was happening, and the players did, and we tried to get on with things, and but like I said, there was too many disruptions. And for me, it affected everybody in the end.
And then we also spoke to Matt Baudry about how it affected him and his teammates.
Yeah, that's why I feel like maybe when we start the season and when you're winning games, I think it's not so much. But then when you start maybe losing a few games, then that's when probably these people just trying to interfere more and just say, maybe we need to do this and maybe we need to do that. Definitely. As a captain, I had some discussion where, the manager just kind of hinted that they were kind of there was pressure, above him on certain things, and it could be like difficult for him. So yeah, it was tough.
So how did that make you feel as a player and the captain to know that you couldn't be certain that the team the manager was picking was 100% his own team?
We knew from the season before, like I said, when we got relegated, when there were some mad things, like some decision that didn't make sense to us as players. We knew exactly where them decisions were coming from. But like I say, I think at the start of season, I thought we were kind of like past it. Like when we started the good run of games, and from what the manager said, I thought it kind of like they'll be under control. But then, yeah, when we start getting some few bad results, you could feel like it start like creeping in a little bit.
What was it like on the training ground then? Because I think one of the things Lee said to us was that quite often the Italian entourage would be talking to different players and in some people's ears and other people's ears saying, you know, you should be playing, you should not be playing. Was that happening?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of this. Like people thought some people were in contact with certain players and things like that. So I thought the players live quite well together. But it never makes it like you need to, when there's too many voices and stuff and different messages being like, it's never good. I think that's why we need a clear structure when there's like the manager, or if you've got a sport director and you know they just talk the same talk, like really they're going the same way, and when they start having different messages coming to different people and bypassing certain people, I think it just becomes just a bit of a mess.
Yeah,
really.
of course. And as captain, was that happening to you directly? Were there sort of conversations you were having with the rest of the entourage?
Like you say, yeah, there's like people that were always here and you never knew really what they were doing, really. But they were here like just don't know what they were doing.
Baudry's a pretty calm, confident guy, but I think you get a sense the way he talks there of just how difficult it was, you know, mentally for the players to cope with that situation and then to go out on a Saturday and to produce a performance.
So obviously the interference was still going on. We were intrigued to find out a little bit more about what it was like when Francesco Becchetti visited the training ground. So we asked our friend Howard Gould what that was like.
I just happened to be at the training ground and he came with an entourage. He always had an entourage. There were 6 or 7 guys around him, including his driver. One would be an interpreter, 2 or 3, I don't know who they were, just hangers on. He came in, he strolled around, he looked at the training ground and he stood there looking out the window at the players training. And I thought, well, I felt like a bit of an odd, person. I said, could I make you a cup of tea? Would you like tea or coffee or something? And he didn't turn around. He was still looking out the window. He didn't even acknowledge me. And his interpreter turned around and he said, I will ask him. So he asked him, I guess in Italian. And he said, yes, he would like tea, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I made a cup of tea, put it down. He never drank it. He was just sat there through the whole time. And then they strolled off. They went out the door. They were a trail of them. It was just like a trail of ants. And they just followed in his footsteps. He walked around. I think he spoke to Ian Hendon. I saw him in the distance talking, and they trailed back again, and that was it. So not even a word.
Bit rude.
Yeah, a bit rude. And I think Howard's underlining there the kind of discomfort within the training ground whenever he showed up. Either that or Howard makes exceptionally bad tea. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
I mean, to be fair, I probably wouldn't drink the coffee from the training ground either. So we tried to get Alessandro Angelieri on this podcast, didn't we? To give his perspective on this. He didn't choose to take up our offer, which I'm deeply disappointed by, because I feel like he and I have a lot of common. I think we'll probably be good mates. The offer's still open, Alessandro, but the reason I say that is that if we go back to the interview that Alessandro did do with our friends at Orient Outlook podcast, he referenced the interference himself, and this was his take on it.
So is it just the manager who picks the team?
Yes, it's the manager that chooses the team every single match, but obviously is a club, and me the chairman speak with the manager, and when we take some dinner, we speak about the team, about the position of the player, as normal. No, is usual to speak about this, but it's the manager that chooses the team, obviously.
I feel like those dinners might be quite sinister.
The manager chooses the team. That's what he says. The manager chooses the team.
Oh, well, if he says that, then that's fine.
Well, exactly.
So Alessandro says there's no interference, and I, for one, think I'll take his word for it, despite the fact literally every single other person we've spoke to has told us the complete opposite. But anyway, that does bring us to the end of episode 5. James, what's going to come up in episode 6?
Well, Matt, we'll have the strange tale of Joby McAnuff. We'll have the Hartlepool imprisonment incident and a rather bizarre visit to the training ground by Francesco Becchetti.
All I'm going to say on that is be prepared to have the eye of the tiger. Thanks, James. It was fun, as always. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we hope to see you next time.
Arrivederci.